Hello and welcome to another edition of Dialing Up Star Trek with Dave. This is my first attempt at using my laptop. Man, I have had some issues. I don't know if anybody's ever made a YouTube video, but I made a YouTube video for 20 minutes and I got interrupted and I hit the red button for stop instead of pause, and so I had to redo and because I did it for 20 minutes and I wasn't going to post two videos, so I had to redo the whole video again. So it's just been one of those days. I don't have the equipment like a lot of these guys that I listen to who have like the headphones and the speaker and everything, but this is my first time doing it on the laptop. I tried doing it on my phone, and that's what I have been doing for the first few, but I just have a regular Samsung, not that sophisticated of a phone, and half the time it'll say, oh, I don't have enough storage, and it'll only let me make like a 7-minute video, and I'm like, oh my goodness. So I'm trying the laptop. But I have to learn to hit pause if somebody's like, oh, I gotta call you, I need to ask you something so that I don't lose everything. So it's just one of those days, and I'm sharing, I'm having some fun. This is Dialing Up Star Trek with Dave, where we're going through Star Trek. I'm a big Star Trek fan, and what do I like, what do I don't like, and the things that I don't like, how would I change it to make it better if I were to rewrite the episode. It's basically what we're doing. We've been doing Star Trek Enterprise, and we are on Episode 2, Fight or Flight. We did the pilot, and I broke that into two parts because it's a long episode, and then I accidentally had two videos for part one because again, malfunction with my phone. So this is inspired. I probably will say this a lot of times. I highly recommend it. I really do. This is inspired by the Penske Files. Wes and Clay, big fans, and they make me laugh. They make me think. They have very good points, and they also have things that I disagree with, and they have times, just like I'm sure anybody watching who is a Star Trek fan may have with me, where they infuriate me. There was one time, just to have some fun, where they're doing Star Trek Enterprise Season 3, and I believe I was listening to the Council episode, and Wes and Clay were talking, and they said, I don't think they've told us what happened to the Xindi home planet. I mean, we know it was destroyed, but I don't know if they told us how it was destroyed. Wouldn't it be interesting if maybe it was the Spear Builders who had destroyed the planet? That would be a good plot development, right? And I'm sitting there listening to it because I listen to it at work a lot of times at my desk while I'm working, and I'm sitting there listening, and I'm like, what are you people talking about? Hello? Have you been watching the show? Have you been watching this series? They most certainly did tell us what happened to the planet. They most certainly did tell us how it got destroyed. It was because the Xindi were fighting amongst themselves. That's why their planet was destroyed. They were basically feuding. And I believe they even say that either the insectoids or the reptilians put charges on the planet and set them off, and that's what destroyed the planet, and what also which also destroyed the one race that doesn't exist anymore, the people that could fly. So just some fun, just having some fun. But there are times that they do. I'm like, what are they talking about? That's not what happened. But that's bound to happen, and it's going to happen with me. So touche, right? Real quick, though, I would love to have a conversation with Clay about his favorite original series episode. His favorite original series episode is, I'm going to have a brain fart. I don't remember the title. It's a very early episode in Season 1 in which they come across the Romulans for the first time, and they're able to see that they have pointy ears like Spock, and so Spock there's starting to be there's this one character on the in the episode who we don't see again in any other episode unless he plays an alien. I don't know about that. I don't know that much. But he's suspicious of Spock, and they have like a submarine battle, and it's Clay's like one of Clay's favorite episodes, at least of the original series. And I think it's a very fun episode. It's interesting. I like the battle type drama and suspense, but it's a very flawed episode. One perfect example is we should never have seen the Romulan aboard his ship with the pointy ears. That makes no sense. It should not have happened. And the reason why it makes no sense is because in the episode, they basically say, hey, we're getting a visual. This is the beginning of the episode. The beginning of the episode, the Enterprise is saying, hey, we're getting a visual that we can see their bridge. But they don't know that we can see them because they show the Romulan commander walking like back and forth on the bridge, and then he looks out and he kind of looks at the screen. And it looks like he's looking at them, but he's really just looking out. He doesn't know that the Enterprise can see him. Please tell me, please tell me where that happens in Star Trek. That never happens in Star Trek, where you're able to just see somebody aboard their ship on the view screen without them knowing it. That's ridiculous. It makes no sense whatsoever. And what's interesting is, let me get my train of thought right. The only reason they do that is to set up the drama of he has pointy ears like Spock. But what's funny is there are so many examples of when I listen to the Penske Files where they get upset in different episodes of different series and they say that's not good that the episode did this just to move the plot along because that doesn't make sense. That's a perfect example, Clay. That makes no sense. There's no way we should have been able to see the Romulan commander. Zero sense whatsoever. And there are so many things about that episode that frustrate me that make no sense whatsoever. One of the biggest things that frustrate me is there is a saboteur on the Enterprise in that episode because he sabotages the phaser bank room where people are basically hitting, I guess, firing phasers. They're at their station, you know, when Captain Kirk says fire, they're pressing the button to fire the phasers. There's a saboteur that has sabotaged that room, and then Spock has to run over there, and there's smoke coming from everywhere. And they say there's a saboteur, or there's a spy, or whatever, however they word it. And Spock I think he gets somebody out and saves them, and he goes back and hits the button at the last second to fire. Pew, 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 we got the Romulan ship, But they never address who this saboteur is. Like, what a way to drop the ball, because that's so interesting. That is such a cool thing, and we never hear another word of it. In the episode or in the series alone, we never know who the saboteur is. They never even search for him. Apparently, I'm supposed to assume he's still aboard the Enterprise, and you apparently don't care. like, there's so much wrong with that episode that it would be fun to really talk about, because I think it's a fun episode, but I don't think it's that great of an episode when there's so many plot holes, when there's so many things that don't make any sense whatsoever. I think that completely hurts the episode and makes it actually not that great of an episode. I don't think it's not that great of an episode, and I don't think at all that it is better than The City on the Edge of Forever. Is that what it is? Where they go back in time and Kirk falls in love with somebody that he has to let die. That episode is better than this one, than the one I'm talking about that Clay likes. So I would disagree with Clay, and I would have fun talking with him about it. So just wanted to have fun with that, mention that. Let's get into the episode. Sorry. I I'm just a big fan, sorry, so I would recommend it. But let's talk about Star Trek Enterprise. Um, this is a better episode than the pilot. I would rank the pilot as a 2, and I would rank this as like a high 4. And I also um, I've heard people say that maybe this would make a better pilot. That Fight or Flight would maybe make a better pilot than the actual pilot. And I could see that. I could see just skipping the pilot and making this the pilot. In my rewrite, the pilot is very important because as a we will quickly recap in our rewrite. Um, the pilot episode is necessary because you see the drama and the conflict between the humans and the Vulcans, and also between the humans and the Klingons, where probably there are some Klingons that are like, oh, the humans helped us to make sure that we didn't go into civil war, but then there are also probably some Klingons who are suspicious and resentful and maybe blame the humans for Klang's death, and maybe might not believe that he died the way they said. There's some layers there. So this episode that I'm going to be reviewing and dialing up is going to be a lot of me saying what I like, because there's a lot on this episode that I like. There's not much that I would change. I would change maybe a couple things, I think. I love the idea that they have been traveling and they've just found a slug. For 2 reasons. One, because it makes me think of when I have talked with friends about, is there life out there in our universe? And I had one friend who said, a lot of times people will say, if there really is life out there, how come they haven't communicated with us? How come we haven't actually seen it? But people have seen flying saucers, but we haven't seen the actual aliens, and they haven't contacted us or anything like that. And I thought it was interesting what he said, which was maybe it's possible that there's life out there, and the reason why they haven't contacted us is because the life that we will find that is out there will be like a small one-cell organism, like an amoeba or something, and not what we're thinking, which is like live long and prosper. Got it, nailed it. So I think that's an interesting concept, an interesting idea, that maybe there is life out there, but it's not what we think of. Maybe it's just like these little creatures, and that's why we haven't heard from them. So I think it's really cool that that's all they've found. Another reason why I like the idea that they've just found the slug is I think it makes the universe bigger. I know that the Penske Files, they say that they don't like the idea that in Star Trek Enterprise they say we can get from here to Neptune or Jupiter in 7 minutes, that we can get to the Klingon homeworld in like a day or two. They say that it makes the universe smaller. And I understand that, because they're saying, hey, we thought these planets were further away, and they're saying we can just travel there and just like that or whatever, right? But I think that they actually make the universe bigger. I understand that their point with that. With saying that you get to Klingon in a day or two, that you can get to Jupiter in 15 minutes or whatever, it does make the universe smaller. But then I think this is an example of them making the universe bigger. Because T'Pol says something like, you do know that 1 in every 40,000 planets doesn't... I'm sorry, only 1 in every 40,000 planets has life. And so, think about it. If they have just found this slug, that means that maybe they've traveled to thousands of planets and haven't seen anything. I also think that they make the universe bigger because in the scene with Archer and T'Pol, they're trying to find life. They're trying to find who they can visit. And Archer says, well, what about the Vulcan star charts? And T'Pol says, well, Starfleet has chosen to explore a section of space that we haven't explored. So it makes it bigger because you're like, wow, the Vulcans haven't even gone this way. So there's more space to explore than we think of. So I think that's really kind of a cool idea. Because I don't think it would be good if the Vulcans were like, okay, humans are going to explore and we've seen all of this before. So I like the idea that there's so much of space to really explore. I'm a fan of that. Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable. I like the humor of Phlox saying that he was thinking of his bat to feed the slug to. I really like the idea of Archer being on his hands and feet, and he's like, I hear a noise. There must be, some part of the ship that's not aligned right or whatever. Because I feel like it really enforces the idea that, that his father is the one who built the ship, and that Archer really knows the ins and outs, and he knows so much about this ship. He knows, it's almost like the idea that maybe he helped his dad. I know they don't say it, but maybe, he was there and he kind of saw everything, so he kind of knows the ship and the way it was built, and he knows everything about it, and I think that's a cool dimension to his character that we don't see before, right? We don't really see in any other series that I can think of where a captain really does that. Usually we might see where if there's a big shake or a big noise, they say something, or if there's a malfunction in the computer system. But to just have somebody go, I hear this noise, I know something's not right, I think it's kind of a cool thing. Kind of gives a dimension to his character where you're thinking of, yeah, this guy and his dad, they built this ship. He knows the ins and outs. So I really like that. I really like the Reed and Malcolm scene, or Reed is Malcolm. The Reed and Travis scene. I agree with the Penske Files that they do not do a very good job with Travis in this series, but this episode is okay. And in my rewrites, I want to have some fun with it. And again, I really want to hear from people. I haven't heard from people. I'm just saying I would love the conversation. I would love to see conversations where people are writing comments and responding to one another. I feel like it would be a fun Star Trek thing to do. I'd love to hear your guys' ideas, but I'm gonna try to do Travis justice, at the very least in later episodes. To me, this is more of a Hoshi episode, so I'm okay with Travis kind of taking a back seat. And this is like a Hoshi episode and a Archer episode and T'Pol and a little bit of Reed, and it's okay for Travis to take a back seat for this episode. Also, real quick, we'll go back for a second. I love, again, the T'Pol and Archer conversation in his ready room when he's on his hands and knees, and you see the differences between humans and Vulcans, where she says, no, Vulcans don't just go exploring on what piques their interest. It has to be logical. So you see the differences. The Reed and Travis scene is really good. Why? Why is it really good? The next two scenes are really good. Let's put it this way. The Reed and Travis scene, and then where they're trying out the torpedoes, because it shows that they are undermatched, that they are inferior, and it shows that they're not prepared to be out here, which I think is the point of this series. Now, obviously, it's not going to be the entire series, but the point of this series, and maybe at the very least, the point of Season 1, is to really show us they're not prepared to be out here, and they're trying to learn to be more prepared. It shows us again that the humans have acted too quickly and too rashly to rush out here, and they're not prepared. Because Reed is saying, we should have had this stuff prepared. We should have had this stuff ready on the ship, and we're not ready. And then they have to go into a fight, and they're not ready. They have to be saved, otherwise they're going to be destroyed. So I think that's really good. I think it's funny that he almost blows his own ship up. He shoots the torpedo, and it comes back, and then Archer's like, Mr. Reed. Like, he's like, Mr. Reed, are you going to take care of this? And I think that's a good scene. I think it again shows what that the Vulcans are kind of right here, because Archer says, no, we're just going to keep going. We're not going to worry about this. We'll be fine. And it's like, no, you're not being wise. You should not have continued. And so it shows their lack of maturity and of wisdom here. What was I going to say? Oh, and then they come across this ship that they're investigating, and I like the idea that they don't really have a set of rules of how to proceed. It also shows the differences between the Vulcans and the humans, that T'Pol is like, maybe they don't want to be bothered. Maybe not everybody answers the knock on the door. Maybe just leave them alone. And so it shows the wisdom in the Vulcans, but it also shows that there can be some benefit to the way that the humans are proceeding, because it kind of sounds like the Vulcans would have just left them alone and flew away, and then this ship that had done this, the ship that had done this to this ship would still be out there eventually at the end, right? So it shows that maybe it's good for the humans to have some curiosity, to investigate more, to care more. So there's like layers, and there's, you can see the pros and the cons of both the Vulcans and also the humans' approach. And the idea may be that they're both right to some degree, and that maybe there needs to be compromises, and if the humans and the Vulcans would work together more, then they would be more successful. I love the idea of Hoshi. I love that. I think Hoshi is realistic. There are people that go into the military that have trouble with adapting and dealing with the things that they have to deal with. I think that's human. That's realistic. Not everybody has those issues, but not everybody is able to just, yeah, I'm fine. And so to have a character who says, I can't sleep because the stars are going the wrong way, who says, what was that? What was that, in the pilot, what was that noise? What was that shaking, to have somebody who says, like, she says, I get claustrophobic in the suits, and I just did it for like the hour training so I could pass. I just sucked it up. Like, I think that's really really interesting, and makes it more realistic and more human, more vulnerable. I like that it makes it more vulnerable, and it's something that she has to overcome, and that's good for her character. I love it when she gets onto the ship and she's like, I don't think you need a translator. Like, this is horrible what's happening here and what's happened to these people, and she's having a very hard time with it, and it's a natural response to be like, yeah, they're all dead. I don't think you need a translator. It's a good line, definitely. I forgot one scene that I gotta go back to. The scene in the mess hall with Dr. Phlox and Tucker. I think is a funny scene. Uh, him understanding what antsy means. Oh, it means restless. I think it's interesting, him just really embracing it and trying everything and being so interested in learning about the humans is a really cool idea, that you have an alien who's doing that. Phlox is really cool because Phlox is almost, to some degree, like the humans. He's curious like the humans are. He wants to understand. He wants to know. He wants to try different things. That's everything that the humans are doing. So you kind of have, in an alien character, someone who mimics or who is pretty similar to the humans. And so it's cool to see it reversed, onto them. And it's kind of funny. He's like, I think they're gonna mate. You think they would let me watch? And it's just funny. Like, I know it's kind of like, oh, yeah, oh, that's, you want to watch. That's perverted. But what I really think about is it's showing that how he's so interested and he wants to know, like, everything about the humans and how they do things and how they tick and all that stuff. And I think it's funny, and it's also interesting. It's really good. It's funny to see Tucker go. I'm glad you're enjoying yourself. um, Also, I like the scene where, well, I like the scene where Trip is like, "Come on, I've been itching to go on a mission. I can't just stay here." You're thinking maybe you picked the wrong profession to be an engineer. Um, Maybe you shouldn't be going over there. It makes me think. I wonder why in so many of the Star Trek series, the engineer goes on away missions. But I guess kind of most people that go on away missions are people they could really use on the ship itself as well. So, but yeah, it's funny to see him go, come on, what if you can't open the hatch, It's cool to see somebody, again, who really wants to explore, and we do know that Trip will get to do that very often in a lot of episodes. So don't worry, Trip, don't worry, you'll get to go out there. I think he goes out like the next episode, so. I love the scene. I like the scene with him and his dog. I like a lot of scenes. I'm a big fan of this episode. I think it's top 5, top 10 at the very least of this season for sure. I like the relationship between Archer and his dog. We don't see that in any other series where a captain has a pet, and why not? You know what I mean? Like, why do they have to be all business? You know, they do that, right? They go like this and they tuck their shirt down. Like, why does everybody have to do that? Why can't he have layers to his character and have a pet? I think it's cute. It humanizes him more. The fact that he keeps saying, Porthos, no more cheese. Fine, this is the last. This is the last one. It's a cool thing. I think it's funny to watch him pace back and forth with Captain Archer. I think that's adorable, and it's cool to have Star Trek have moments like that. It doesn't have to all be business and battle scenes and what have not, and Star Trek doesn't have to all be about exploring. It's good to have scenes that humanize the characters, and this scene does that. Also, what's good about this scene is you see the dilemma that he has, where he is frustrated with Vulcans. Oh, she sucks the air out of the room, but then he realizes as well, maybe she is right. Maybe they don't want to be bothered. So he has that struggle, and we saw that in the pilot where he realizes I do need you, and I added a scene in my rewrite where he expresses that a little bit more. I think that's good. I like that. I like what they're doing with Reed. Reed is the character who is saying, like, we're not going to go out there and just start shooting, destroying everything. He's not the. I did watch the first season of Lower Decks, and I listened to the Penske Files. It was really good. It was their review of season 1 is one of my favorite of their reviews of a season. I thought it was very well done. It is a comedy show, but it's more than that. It's more than just comedy. It's a very good season 1 was very good. I really enjoyed Lower Decks season 1. I think Lower Decks season 1 may be possibly the best season 1 of a Star Trek that we've had. And I haven't seen them all. I haven't watched Picard yet or a Discovery. I've been watching Voyager. Voyager is one of my favorite season 1s as well. And I would say so far, for a complete season, I think Lower Decks and Voyager... Oh, I guess I would say, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I would say Lower Decks, Voyager, and the original series are probably the best 3 that have like the best complete first season. But there's a character on Lower Decks. I don't remember his name. I think it is Lieutenant Shax or something like that. He's a Bajoran chief of security, and he's just... I got weapons locked on their warp core. He's ready to just blow things up. And Reed is not that character, but he is definitely a character who is really trying to protect the ship, and let's be prepared. And I think that's a good character. Like, he wants to bring, like, phaser rifles, and the captain's like, no, phasers will just be okay. And it's like, maybe phaser rifles wouldn't be a bad idea, especially when you've seen that the ship that you're going on has been fired upon. I like that. I wasn't sure how I felt about the scene where they get to the ship and Reed is about ready to place charges, and Archer's like, hold on a minute. At first, I wanted Reed to be able to figure out, oh, okay, I opened up the hatch, but I like layers, and I like the idea of that it's good for him to say we need to be more prepared for a fight because there's lots of hostile aliens out there, but it's okay for him to also to see don't act rashly, and Archer saying, hold on a second, okay, we got in. So, just because things don't go the way we need them to go right away, we don't need to automatically just go set charges. Like, give it a second and let's see, and then if we need to. So I like that. Um, there's that. What's the word? I was gonna say dilemma, but dynamic there, where you see the 2 points of views, and you're like, oh well, they're both kind of right. It makes you think. It makes you go, I also think it's very interesting that he listens to T'Pol when she says, we need to leave here. These aliens could come back and put your ship in danger. So he cares about his ship and his crew. And it sounds like that's what the Vulcans would do then. And I think the scene where they're eating together is very good. You can feel the tension there. You can feel the what's the word I want to put? You can feel that Archer is having a crisis in a sense, a moral crisis of what he's done, and it doesn't feel right in his bones or in his spirit or his soul. And they're trying to basically do small talk, and he's like, they were injured crewmen on their or not injured, they were dead crewmen on their ship, murdered. I think it's interesting that T'Pol says, we would have never, he says, what if they were Vulcan? They weren't Vulcan crewmen. Archer says, what if they were Vulcan crewmen? Would you have just left them? They weren't Vulcan crewmen. I didn't say were they, I asked you what if. And she says, we would have never even gone over there. So she again shows that the Vulcans wouldn't have even bothered them. Which they have a different way of doing things. They have different protocols in a sense. So you see the differences of how the humans and the Vulcans would handle that situation. And you can see the wisdom maybe, or maybe you understand the Vulcans, their logic and their, let's not just jump into any situation. Maybe they don't want to be bothered. Let's just keep going. But then you also see it's probably good what the humans did as well. So maybe Vulcans have things to learn from humans as well. I like the idea that he says, you guys have logic. We have a code of conduct or ethics as well. And I like that he just says, I can't believe I ignored my conscience just to, grab my hide and grab my, just to run away. I'm glad that he says, no, we need to do the right thing. That is a really good moment where Archer says, we need to do the right thing here. And I think that's a good moment. I think it's a funny moment when he says, you Vulcans always have an answer for everything, because that is very true about the Vulcans. I've been watching Star Trek Voyager, and there's an episode where Voyager is trying to get home, and there's this technology that they're trying to get that the government of that planet will not give them. But like a rogue citizen is willing to trade them that technology for their database just so they could have interesting stories, because they're a planet that's all about pleasure. And Captain Janeway would love to get the technology, but she knows it's not the right thing to do, because you don't want to go against that government who has said we can't do that. And Tuvok, the Vulcan, does a covert mission to get the technology. And in a conversation with him and the captain, she says, she says logic, you can use logic to almost defend anything, which is one of its downfalls. And when, like, thinking of this episode where Archer says, "Oh, you Vulcans have an answer for everything," Janeway says, "From now on, bring your logic to me. Don't act on your logic behind my back." And Tuvok says, "My logic was not in error. I was in error." They always have an answer for everything to defend their logic. You almost never hear a Vulcan say, "You know what, my logic was wrong there." And so it kind of reveals something about the Vulcans here in this prequel series. You guys always have an answer for everything. And I have taken time travel completely out of this series. I said that in my last episode, but a funny thing is, they have time travel in this series, and T'Pol never admits that time travel is possible, even though she goes back in time herself. At least once. I don't remember if she does twice. So it's like the Vulcans can't admit they're wrong. And when they do admit they're wrong, you're like, you didn't even really admit it. And it almost shows their arrogance, which is really typical of Vulcans. It's a good thing. Real quick, I don't know if I said this in my original episode, but I disagree with Wes in the Penske Files in the I can't talk right now. In the pilot episode, he says in the scene where Archer is talking with the Vulcans because they have Klang, and they're saying they're going to pull the plug, and they're saying to hold back on Enterprise's launch. And in that scene, the Vulcan gets a little loud and yells, and Wes says he doesn't like that, and I think that I would disagree with it. I think it's actually, it makes sense, and it's really true to what a Vulcan is. Now, I understand that we have not seen enough of the relationship between the humans and the Vulcans. We haven't seen enough of that just from the pilot. We're like 10 minutes into the show. So we haven't seen how frustrated the Vulcans really can be by the way the humans act and their decisions. We're starting to see that as we continue through the pilot and even into episode 2. But at that scene, at that point of time in the episode of the pilot, we haven't seen enough of that. I understand that part. But his response of him getting loud and kind of almost like losing his temper a little bit, or getting agitated a little bit, is completely true to what a Vulcan is. Because what a Vulcan is, think about this for a minute. Does it say in any... Okay, let's think about Star Trek as a whole. Think about all the series and the movies we've seen. Do Vulcans have emotions? Yes. Vulcans have emotions. So how do they suppress those emotions? Do they use some kind of technology, like something like a machine or something that they put on themselves or whatever? You know, like, I don't know, like, no, they don't. Do they put technology stuff like in their body, like the Borg do, to like make them cyber genetic? Like, do they do that to suppress their feelings and their emotions? No, there is no technology whatsoever helping them to suppress their emotions. Do they have some ability because they're Vulcans? Like Beta Zeds have the ability to sense emotions and things like that. No, they don't have some ability like the Beta Zeds almost have like a mutant ability because of their race. That's their ability that they have to do what they can do. The Vulcans don't have that. The only way that the Vulcans are able to suppress their emotions is basically, literally, through discipline. That's it. Theoretically, anybody could do what the Vulcans do. It would just take a lot of practice. There is nothing whatsoever in Star Trek lore that I know of, and I'm not saying I know everything, that says that the Vulcans are the only one that could do this practice, this discipline. No, they've just practiced a discipline. So think about it. If anybody could do it, it's almost like they're kung fu, or they're, you know what I mean? Like, they've practiced this discipline. You can fail then. You can mess up. It's almost like the Vulcans are just really good at dieting, and they have really good discipline. But you can have moments where you're like, I shouldn't have had that cookie or whatever. So it makes sense to me for Vulcans to have emotional outbursts. I think what makes sense to me more is if you say, I don't want to see them have tons of emotional outbursts, because when they really lose their ability to utilize this discipline, I want it to be because they're sick or because something is going on. And we do see that. We see that with Spock in the original series, with those flowers that shoot the spores that infect his brain, and he loses the ability all of a sudden. Or you see that in Spock's father in The Next Generation, when he has an illness that is hindering his ability to use his discipline to hold back his emotions. But I still think that you should be able to see at times little glimpses of the Vulcans having some trouble with their discipline, where they're not like able to do it 100% without any issue. We see that in the original series, where Spock has little times where there's little holes in his discipline, but there's not like big ones. The big ones are when something really bad happens to him. So I'm okay with the pilot episode, the guy he just gets a little loud. He just goes, listen to me, you're making a mistake. That's all he does, is he gets just a little loud, so I'm okay with that. I disagree. I disagree with your analysis, Wes, in that instance. So I like the scene again with the captain and Tucker and T'Pol, and he says, we're going back. And I love the scene with the ship, in which they try to fire upon them, and it just bounces off like nothing, like it just ricochets off. It shows again that they are outmatched, that they are not prepared to be out here, because they cannot defend themselves. They don't even have regular shields. They have hull plating. This is awesome. They don't have tractor beams. They have a transporter, but they don't use it. It is really cool. It makes it seem like they're so outmatched, that they're the underdogs. And so this ship comes, and this ship comes now to attack them. And it does the scan, and it realizes, hey, they have what we want. And we never see the aliens, so it makes it more mysterious. It makes it more kind of chilling. You know, that happens a lot of times, I feel like, in horror movies or thrillers, when you don't even see who the villain is until the last second or whatever. It makes it more scary, because it's the unknown. And so we have the unknown here. And I love the idea, again, that they fire their torpedo, and it just ricochets off. They're helpless. It is really good. And then the ship comes, and they realize it's the same people, the dead crewmen on the other ship. I forgot to say that I also like the scene where before they go back over to their ship to try to collect information to find their species, I like the scene where Archer is telling everybody what to do and why he's picked them. and he's being a leader, giving them instructions, telling Malcolm, no, they're all dead over there, we don't need security, stay here and get these torpedoes set, even though he's not able to eventually, but still, he's being a commander, and I like that. There's one part of that scene that I would change, and here's my first rewrite, though again, I think it's a great episode. When he tells Hoshi, we're going to need to download like their language, maybe their files or their logs, so we can learn their language. I wish he would have brought up the translator. And in my original rewrite in the pilot series, I had the idea that she has created this technology to translate other languages, but it is like in the beta test, and it's still being worked on. And so she was picked for this mission because of that she's continually trying to develop and tweak, but also because of her abilities as a linguistic. So both. And so maybe he says, how's that? In my rewrite, I would have him say that she needs to do that, and then ask how that technology is coming along, and say that she could say she's hit a snag in the road with one of the processors or whatever, and she's still working on it. And then you kind of take the translator out of there, because if you say that the translator is working fine, then you're almost wondering, why are they having so much trouble all the time communicating with these races? You know what I mean? There is an episode later on in the series where the translator isn't working and he's trying to fix it, and he just has the alien keep talking, and then eventually, oh, okay, I can understand what they're saying. So if that's how the translator works, then you're thinking when this ship comes and they're like, hey, it's the people from the same people from the other ship, then all that should happen is just keep him talking for a minute. Okay, now we can understand him. And that's a plot hole. So I think the idea that the translator doesn't work yet, and she is having to rely on herself, which she does in this episode, but explaining that the translator doesn't work yet makes us understand that she is completely reliant on her ears and her ability as a linguistic, and I think that would be good. So I would rewrite that part. I like the idea of, wow, humans used to, and we probably still do, take things from animals to use for vaccines and medicines and aphrodisiacs, and that's what these aliens are doing. So they look at other aliens and other species as less than them. And it could come into question, make us think about our ethics, because, these animals and the things that we do to them, is it right? And we could have a discussion about that, which is one great thing about Star Trek. Star Trek always, when you really watch it, it makes you think, and it can make you have discussions about life in general and about issues in our day-to-day life and issues in our human race. So I like that. But that's the only thing I would rewrite, is I would do that. I love the fact that the torpedo just bounces off the ship, and the Enterprise is in trouble, and they need help. And I like that. I like that we're the underdog. Or actually, what I wanted to say, actually, let me go back for a second and think about this. I wanted to say that I like the idea of I lost my train of thought. Sorry. So they're being attacked by this ship, and they're the underdogs, and the ship is drilling into the Enterprise. It's very like suspenseful and very scary. They're gonna drill right into the ship. It's like the Borg. The Borg drilled into the Enterprise, drilled a hole into the Enterprise in TNG, and here's this ship that's gonna do that. They've scanned the Enterprise. They've found that they have what they're looking for. So they want to do the same thing to the Enterprise crew that they did to the other crew, which would be to put tubes in them and to take stuff off of them. I like that Archer's like, all right, give everybody phaser guns. We're gonna fight these people if they come aboard this ship. Like finally, Reed's probably thinking, finally you're talking my language here. And I also like it. I think it's very good for Hoshi when the ship comes and they're like, hey, that's the guy. That's the same species as the crew, the dead crew on the other ship. I like that the Enterprise is like, Hoshi, if you can't communicate with this guy, we're done for. And it shows her ability as a linguistic, that she's able to rescue them. She's their last hope. And it makes you realize, wow, it's a good thing she's aboard this ship, because this ship would be done for if it wasn't for her in this episode. And I think that's really good. I think it shows also her character development, that she starts being scared and saying, I can't do this, because she's been questioning and doubting herself from the beginning of this series, and now it gives her a little bit more self-confidence. Yes, you can do it. That's why you're here. We need you. And she's successful in being able to talk to him. I think that's really good for her character and helps us to appreciate and understand her more, and how valuable she is. So I really like that as well. The second thing I would change about this episode, I would not have Reed say, hey, I fixed the torpedoes, can I fire? No, I want to see that dragged on a little bit longer. I want to see in another episode Reed say, I've been working on these torpedoes for a while now. I think I've got it. I want to see the payoff be better and be bigger, rather than we just figured it out at the end of the episode. So I don't want the Enterprise to be able to fire anything. I want them totally reliant on Hoshi, and then totally reliant on this other species ship. This other species ship seems very powerful, because in the original episode, all the Enterprise does is like fire one torpedo, I believe, and the other ship is able to just destroy it with its laser weapons. So it's not like it really needed much help from Enterprise to begin with. So I want to see this ship trying to get away and the other ship chase it down and destroy it. Because then I also feel like you're really seeing that alien race get justification, get justice for what that ship did, and that ship being a coward and trying to get away, and it's unsuccessful and they destroy it. So I would change that. That would be the second thing I would change. I would not have the Enterprise be able to fire anything. They are completely reliant, because it continues to show other species are more prepared and we are the underdogs. So that I would change that as well. The ending is fine, where we learn that they've talked with this alien race, they've gotten to know them. I think that is very good, because it shows the exploration, it shows humans making relationships with other races. That's a good thing. I think it's a very good episode. I would only change 3 things, and I'm going to tell you the last thing I would change. So I would only change 3 things in this episode. The third thing I would change is this. I have a problem with what the Enterprise does with the slug. So at the beginning of the episode, they say that they have found this slug. I believe they have taken the slug from its original planet, and it's in sickbay, and it isn't surviving in this environment. They have to find another environment for it to be able to survive on. To me, that doesn't make any sense. Why don't you just go back to the planet where you found the slug and return it to its home planet? That makes no sense whatsoever. Because at the end of the episode, they're like, oh, we found another planet for the slug to live on. Hey, it's not the same environment as you're used to, Sluggy. It's not the same environment as your home planet, but you'll adapt. Why the hell should the slug have to adapt? The slug didn't say, please take me aboard your ship and take me to another planet. The slug didn't have any say in this. You just took the slug and you brought it to another planet that was close enough. Why wouldn't you just bring it back to its original planet? It doesn't make any sense to me. Their reasoning doesn't make any sense to me. You're on a starship. Is the planet that far away that you can't just go back? Why did you take it off its planet in the first place? You couldn't do scans and stuff of the slug on its planet? I'm not a fan of that. I understand what they're doing, where they're trying to say, hey, the slug will adapt, I will adapt as well. That's what Hoshi is saying. That's the correlation, but why should the slug have to adapt? Hoshi, you chose to be on the Star Trek Enterprise. You chose to join Starfleet. This slug hasn't chosen anything. You have taken it off. The only way this would be a good analogy is if Hoshi was taken off planet Earth against her will and is now, okay, I can adapt. But she chose, so the analogy doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not a fan of what they're doing. I don't feel that that's what Starfleet would do. Starfleet and the people on this ship make it a point to try to respect other cultures and not just remove people from their planets or whatever. I know it's a slug. I know you could make the argument, oh, is it really sentient or whatever? And fine. I think that's good. It's kind of good then because you can have that discussion. So maybe keep it because you can have that discussion. Wait a minute, is this slug sentient? I don't know. If he is, then maybe it wasn't funny that Phlox said I was thinking about feeding him to my bat. But I'm going to go with no, I don't like it. And so I was thinking about it. I was thinking, should they just return the slug back to his ship? Or back to his own planet? I would not have the slug at all. I would cut the slug from the episode. I don't think that you're going to really... Well, no, I like the idea of them only... This is how I would change it. This is how it would change the episode. This is the third change. You have the first scene with Hoshi and with the Doctor. But you have it on a planet where they are investigating the slug, where they are taking scans of it and looking at it, and they're having their conversation. Phlox doesn't mention the bat. We don't need to have that. There's enough humor with Phlox in the scene with him and Tucker in the mess hall. I don't even think you really need to have the scene where Phlox is saying, oh, maybe the slug would do better at a university. I don't need that. But the slug never comes on the ship. He's on the planet. And Dr. Phlox and Hoshi are discussing that this is the only alien that they've come across in their whole travels. So we still have the scene where we still have the slug. We still have this scene where we realize, wow, they've been flying around in space and this is the only alien life form they've come across. Because not every planet has life. So you still have that scene. You see the scope of the universe that they keep traveling and they haven't come across anybody. You can still have Tucker be on the planet and go, man, we've been traveling for this many weeks and the only alien we've come across is a slug. You can still have that. That's a good scene. But have it on the planet. And they don't take the slug on the Enterprise. They don't take it off its planet for no reason and then go, oh no, he's in sick bay. We gotta try to keep him alive because we shouldn't have done that. I would do that. Or I would do one of two options. Or if you take him aboard the Enterprise, you got to bring him back to his planet. One or the other. You got to bring him back to his planet if you take him off the planet. You could do that to show that the humans were rash to just take an alien thing off of its planet, and they would have to admit we should have kept him on his planet. He's a slug. Now he's in danger. We shouldn't have done that. You could have that. As long as the humans and the doctors say, maybe you shouldn't have brought the slug on board because now he's in danger. Maybe you should have thought about it more rather than just grabbing him and going. But you have to return him to the planet then, at the end of the episode. So you do one or the other. And you do not do an analogy between Hoshi and the slug. You take that out. So those are the 3 changes that I would make about this episode. I think it's a very good episode. On my scale of rating, I'm trying to look at my notes real fast because I have written down how I'm going to rate these episodes. Sorry, my apologies. Here we go. So on my scale of rating, if I have to do 1 to 2 corrections, if I would rewrite 1 to 2 things, or basically 2 or under, right, then it's a classic grade 5. I had to do 3 rewrites. I had to do what I would change about this episode is, again, as a quick recap, is the slug part needs to be changed. We don't have the analogy between the slug and Hoshi, and you either A, leave it on the planet and you talk about how, wow, we've only come across a slug, or you bring it up aboard the ship and you realize the humans have made another mistake, another careless mistake. They should not have removed this slug from its environment. Let's bring it back home. You do one or the other. But I would change that. I would change this part of the scene where they're about to go back onto the ship for the second time, and he tells Hoshi, we're going to try to learn their language. And what I would change is he asks her about the translator that she's working on, and she explains, I hit another snag in the road with the processor. I need to make it more sophisticated so it can process things more quickly or whatever. Whatever her explanation is going to be, so that we understand that she has to be reliant on her own abilities right now. And then the third thing I would change is the Enterprise does not fire 1 torpedo at the enemy ship. They're still trying to get their ship going. We'll have to wait to another episode to see if they finally get the torpedoes working better, and the alien ship with the single crewman on there, who is the same crewman of the dead men on the other ship, he is the one that chases down that ship and destroys it. Those are the 3 changes I would make about this episode, and that makes this episode a grade 4, because 3 to 4 changes makes an episode above average. So I would give this episode a 4, and because it's 3 changes and not 4 changes, I would give it a high 4. So this is a high 4. The pilot was a high 2. So look at the increase in quality. It's a really good episode. I would highly recommend it. Again, I highly recommend the Pensky Files. A good show. I'm going to always plug them and recommend them because they've been my inspiration. And I'll probably talk about them on this show and talk about things that I disagree with them and agreed with them from time to time. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit of a long one, I know. Sometimes I know I carry on a little bit. But I love this episode. I think it's one of the best episodes of Season 1 of Star Trek Enterprise. It's this close to being a classic. It's this close. And again, please, I would love to hear discussions amongst you guys about if you think I'm crazy or what you agree with, and things maybe you didn't like that you would change. And so yeah, hope you guys have a good week and come back for episode 3, probably next week.